I read 5 books this month. I've got 2 dogs who are tip-tapping through my living room, and I'm probably never gonna want to film down here ever again because I bet this noise is gonna be annoying for the rest of the video. But without further ado, let's get into this non-spoiler monthly wrap-up for January, which I'd say I had 5 home runs in. And the first book I read of the month is, I would say, safely going to end up in my top 5, if not top 3 of 2025, and that is Happiness Falls by Angie Kim. This was given to me by somebody who really knows my reading style and me as a person, and as soon as I turned the first page, I was like, yep, of course. This follows a main character who is a college student named Mia. She is part of a very suburban Korean-American family of 5. There's a mother, a father. Mia is one of 2 twins, and then the twins have a younger brother who is non-speaking. This non-speaking younger brother is the last person to see their father in the flesh before he goes missing. And so you're being led through this story by Mia, who is unreliable due to her hypercritical nature. This is also taking place at that point in time with COVID where it's a little bit manageable, but we still don't really know what's gonna happen. And I think that's a really odd slice of history to just be slipped in there, but it definitely affects the way that they're communicating with law enforcement and one another and their community as they try to track somebody down in a time where nobody's paying attention. It reminded me a lot of the feelings I had the first time I read We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I truly would gift this book and recommend this book to quite literally anybody, and I cannot wait to go pick up Angie Kim's debut novel. This is her 2nd book, and I just looked up the blurb for her first book, and it does seem equally thrilling. So this is like an absolutely gripping mystery, and like I said, I would recommend it to quite literally anyone. I don't know how I didn't know it existed until it was gifted to me. Something that I want to do in 2025 is revisit some of the classics, whether I read them in high school and enjoyed them or hated them and would like to see what I think about them now, or think I should have read them back then and never had the opportunity or took the opportunity. One of which is Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. I vividly remember enjoying this novel, but once I picked this up for a reread, it was a really weird mix of familiar and unfamiliar to me, and I just kept having this constant feeling of like deja vu as I was reading it. The most interesting thing to me this time around was the way they're talking about and mentioning advertising and like the natural flow of the world in this futuristic society. Something so crazy to me is how old this book is. I don't think I had a grasp of that in high school, and it's really interesting what futuristic assumptions are made that actually kind of hit the mark and which ones seem still realistically not too far off. The back of this edition is full of like a pretty lengthy interview with Ray Bradbury, and he seems a little bit questionable in that. I don't know that I would vibe with him. And so from that, I went into my book club pick for the month, which was a home run and something that I actually didn't select for the group, and that is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I started this knowing I'd seen it on every table ever at Barnes & Noble over the past year and in coffee shops, and this is just a very recognizable cover, always bookending the teen section at the library. At first, I didn't quite get it. I think that's the best way to describe it, is I just didn't get it. I really thought that this was probably like this generation's 13 Reasons Why, and that's definitely because of the setup of like lack of friendship in this peer group, I think. But you're following a high school girl named Pip who really thinks that this murder case involving a few slightly older kids from a couple of years ago that is half unsolved and half solved, she doesn't think that they're on the right conclusion, so she decides for her like senior project to kind of dig it back up and see if she can prove the innocence of a kid that lives in her town. I think Holly Jackson wrote the perfect mystery here. When the ending of a mystery or a whodunit is revealed, and it is something that you actually had every single Easter egg to figure out, but still couldn't quite do it, that's when I think they've nailed it. And this did that for me. And I would love to know if anybody completely nailed it. I'd say I had about like a 70% accuracy rate with like in the end how it went down. I don't think I would like to continue this series. It does seem to jump and follow Pip as she gets older and older, like in college and then as an adult, as she becomes known for solving this murder. But this was a really fun read. I started it on audiobook and that wasn't it for me. But once I switched to print, I was really, really flipping through the pages and I ended up enjoying this quite a bit. Next up, we have Gearbreakers by Hana Mikuta. This is a woman-loving woman duology in the teen fiction section. This is something that had I read in middle school or even high school, I would have absolutely eaten up. You're following two women in this futuristic world in which the like ruling government has started modifying people to be able to pilot and control and use robots as like an extension of their bodies. So you've got one main character who's modified to be in this robot world, and you have another main character who's entirely human and lives to take these robots down, and she is what they call a Gearbreaker. Very early on, Gearbreaker is captured, and the interrogating agent from the robot people that is kind of trying to figure her out is like, hey, I want to take the government down too. I think we can work together. And they do. And they join up really fast. And the rest of the book is about difference and community and found family and trusting people for the good of your mission and all of those kind of classic YA, almost like dystopian tropes that you'll hit. But this was a lot of fun. And there's only one other book. But I will say, the way that this ends is insanely frustrating to me. And I knew I could not pick up the second one immediately without reading it through a lens of frustration. And I'm not really about that. So I can't wait to look up other people's reviews of the duology as a whole and see what's being said there, because the ending of Gearbreakers drove me crazy, but it's also at this time where like they're really starting to build a relationship and I want to know what happens next. So once again, I was constantly being reminded that this is a book in the teen section and nothing's really gonna happen, but it is really, really, really cute to watch their relationship start to bloom. And it's a form of representation that I didn't have and I wish I would have. And I'm so glad to be reading it now. After a really, really long wait, I finally picked up The Mystery Guest by Nita Prose. I absolutely loved The Maid when I read it, and this is a follow-up where it's just the same setting, the same main character Molly, and a different murder. And the instant that I picked this book up, I was like, yes, we're back with Molly the Maid. Her lens and her very blunt view of the world and very straightforward intake of conversation and happenings is written beautifully. Nita does a really good job of getting you so engrossed in the way that Molly is perceiving the world that the mystery is actually kind of the back burner of the story, at least in my case when I read these books. I don't think that this one tops The Maid, but I think for the sake of revisiting Molly's character and just understanding a murder's gonna go down in the same hotel and of course Molly's gonna solve it, like, you just get to enjoy Molly here. And that's really all we could possibly ask for. I would recommend The Maid to anybody. And if you really, really fell in love with Molly, I would recommend Mystery Guest to you. I think that Nita Prose could just keep writing these forever and ever, and I would keep reading them forever and ever, because I think that Molly is a force to be reckoned with, and I love being inside her brain. And then finally, I am decently into The House in the Cerulean Sea, and that will be a finish for February, but it's what I'm starting February off with. And I just want to say that I can't believe I was so stubborn and didn't pick this up until now, because it's beautiful in every single way. And so with that, I'm starting February, and I will pick up Godslayers, the second Gearbreakers book immediately after. And the rest of the month is kind of a mystery.